Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last MuOS video. I think we were on beans or baked beans at the time. Now I'm running Pixie, so yeah, maybe it's time for an update. Uh, I'm using a MIUI theme over here, so this is not the default theme. But it was important to me that whichever theme I was using, I was able to see all the options on the main screen, so I did that. This is the main screen. This thing boots up on Pixie, I think about 16 seconds, which is, it used to boot up in 8. Then when we went to AW Banana, all banana, it booted up in about 12, and now with Pixie it's about 16 seconds. So we're creeping on, territory of some other operating systems like Rocknix, which a little disappointing. But this thing works pretty well once it's on. All right, so content. Obviously, you've got all your consoles here. Yes, I do actually have Nintendo Wii. It does not work well, but it does work. You can get it if you go to the Discord page, download that. But moving on. Let's say you wanted to select a different emulator for one of these systems. That's pretty easy. So let's say we go into Game Boy Advance. And it's got some defaults. But if you hit select, you click assign core, and you can use LNR for page up, page down. You go to Game Boy Advance, and now this is the important thing. When you select your emulator, you can choose for this directory, for recursive, which means this directory and directories that are inside of this directory, or for the individual ROM. So you see those options there on the bottom of the screen. Super duper useful. And then from there on, it's just going to work. You go out. Now, again, MuOS is different than a lot of the other operating systems where you can name your folders whatever you want to name them, and MuOS will pick them up. So, for example, if I go into Nintendo, Super Nintendo, right, I didn't want to keep all my, I had all these Kaizo ROMs. I didn't want to keep them in my regular folder. I wanted to group them out. So if I click on Kaizo, I have an entire set of, Kaizo ROMs. And then we go out of here and we have all the other stuff. Now, artwork. Yeah, MuOS does not have built-in artwork support, but there is at least 2 apps that'll do it. I'm still doing it manually by scraping it on my desktop and then copying the files over. But there are apps to do it directly. So let's go to those utilities. Some of these came with the operating system, some I've added. RD is actually one of them. And yeah, I don't think I have the other one on here. NetSurf is a full-fledged web browser. How cool is that? You can also get that through Portmaster. GPLove is extremely useful for testing your gamepad out. Look how well this works. Look how good these thumbsticks work with aftermarket software. I don't think it works as good on the stock firmware. But this was an app that did not come with MuOS, but I added it. You've got a Bluetooth app, which I haven't tested, but I'm told it works. And then, like I said, you've got the artwork. Archive managers for installing either updates or apps. Some of these apps, you have to know a little bit about Linux file systems to be able to copy them over manually. Some of these apps were designed for Banana, and I kind of figured out how to rename files and directories and get them working on Pixie because the structure has changed a little bit. Again, you might have to know some Linux for that, or just wait for them to update themselves. Yep, there's a themes app here. I don't think that's working anymore on Pixie at all, but yeah. Okay, so what else can we go through? You've got settings, a bunch of great options here. Everything you're going to need, I think. And if it's not here, you can go start editing configuration files. A lot of this is driven by RetroArch configurations, so you can just do that. You could also just edit those files manually, or you can just save them from within RetroArch. What else is kind of cool on here? So Doom, these use the, what is it? PR Boom emulator. But that doesn't work with Doom mods. But guess what? If you go into ports, there's now a Doom engine which supports GZ Doom and all the great stuff. And under GZ Doom, you can play, Brutal Doom, and that's one of the most heavily modded Dooms. And Pirate Doom works too. It was choppy at first. I changed some settings. It's running at perfect speed now. All right, let's talk about configuration files and how to get into and out of content. Okay, so let's say we go into a... all right, actually, let's talk about DOS. DOS games work well when you zip them up. Just put the zip files here. That is the best way to do that. PR boom files, there's information on the web about how to configure those, or you can ask me in the comments, and those work well. Same is true for the GZ Doom, which is under ports. It's going to take some tinkering to get it to work. Same is true about ScumVM. Same thing. Supports a lot of games under ScumVM, but you're going to have to know how to set up these files. Same is true for PlayStation. If you've got multi-disc games, you're going to want to create playlists. But again, not too terrible. For everything else, every emulator at this point, you should be using CHD files. They work the best, and they support multi-track. So instead of having a queue with a bunch of bins, you can just have single files that are CHDs for all these disk-based systems. Okay, so let's go into a game. Nintendo, sure. All right, so we're in Alleyway. I don't like this new pop-up that didn't used to happen on the old versions of MuOS, but I can live with it. I could probably figure out how to get rid of it too. So, menu button up on top, right? So menu and X brings you into RetroArch settings. And you've got everything in here that you're going to need. I probably don't have to talk about this because this is kind of standard across all systems. But yes, if you save a file with a configuration file with a directory name, it'll apply to that directory, or the system name, it'll apply just to that system. All right, I could probably show you all that later in the file manager where all those files are. But okay, quick menu, resume. Now, if you want to just exit, it's menu and start. Yep, takes you out. Now, that is a RetroArch core. Some of these systems are using external emulators, like especially PSP is using an external emulator. So the action buttons can vary. It's generally menu and start to quit. Sometimes it's select and start to quit. Sometimes I think with DS, with Drastic, and with PSP, it's something a little bit different. But try to avoid using this reset button as much as you can. It can corrupt your card if you run it at the wrong time. You're basically pulling the power plug on a computer, and this is a computer. So enough about that. Okay, let's go into content. Excuse me. Let's go into utilities. Let's go into. I don't know why people hate using this app so much. This thing is wonderful. All right, so I actually have everything on a single card setup. Dual card, you're going to have some files are supposed to be in the same place, but it's still, even on a dual card setup by default, it still uses some files from here. So what can we do? Some directories and important things to know about. Ports go here. Well, the data files for ports go here. The shell scripts, which are what launches them, go inside of ROMs. So here are all your ROMs, actually. And like I said, DOS has zip files, right? And ports are going to be a bunch of SH files. Now, the data for those ports is here. This works differently than other operating systems that are emulation station based, where they're all in the same directory. Here, they're kind of split out into two directories because MuOS is going to show you every file it sees, and if the files or the shell scripts on the directories were together, it would have made a mess. So that's why they decided to do it that way. But otherwise, that's how your ROMs directory works. You can name these directories whatever you want, like I said before, and then you just assign a core using the select button when you're browsing content. So, for example, you go to Super Nintendo. Yeah, so you may notice the names are a little bit different. MuOS has some way of reading these directory names and calling them something else. I think that can be changed in settings too, but yeah, it like assumes that SNES is Nintendo Dash Super Entertainment System. All right, so you go into SNES, and like I said, here's my Kaiser directory, same thing as you saw in Browse Content. So when you go to Browse Content, you're pretty much just viewing this ROMs directory. Okay. Archive, this is where you place files that you want to install, like updates and some other things. Okay. Actually, the Dolphin emulator is also an archive, for what it's worth. So we have MuOS. This is obviously where all the magic happens, but you can go into your 2 and do a lot of stuff. So application is actually where the applications install. So the new directory structure for applications is there's a shell script called muxlaunch.sh, and the app lives in the same directory. That changed between Banana and Pixie. All right, I don't know how much you care about that. BIOS, put your BIOS there. Core, I don't even know what some of these are, but here's where your emulators go. So generally, this comes pre-installed, but like when you install, let's say Dolphin, it's gonna put it there. But and then you've got RetroArch also. Info, this is important. Info, assign is actually, you don't need to touch this either, but assign is actually how the emulators define themselves in your menu system so that you can assign them to various ROMs. Okay, so you've got catalog. Now this is where your artwork is going to go. So if you want to put artwork for all of your systems, that's going to be under info, catalog, and folder. Right, box art. So these are all the directory names. They match. If these match the directory name of the system, you're going to see the artwork on your main screen. That's box art. This is grid. I'm not sure what grid is. That just came in the recent Pixie update. I think it's for like a large screen display. When you plug in through HDMI, you get a different user interface. I haven't played with that yet. This is a preview of the game, splash screen, and text. So assuming you fill all these things out, you're going to have a lot of content. I think I don't see manual here. I know Emulation Station has that, but you've got a splash screen, preview, box art. Pretty cool. Okay. That is basically it. So that's folder is the one where you put your systems. Obviously, then each system has its own folder too, like the PR Boom files go there, DOS, Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Advance. So when you select a core, when you assign a core, I don't know if you remember, the first thing I did was I selected what system it was, and then I selected what emulator it was. So the emulators define themselves as follows. They define what system they're for, and then they define themselves. So once you assign, like, say, a folder with Game Boy Advance, if you choose any of those emulators, it also knows that it's a Game Boy Advance. And once it does that, it looks for files with matching names in this directory. So if you've got a PNG here, it is going to display it as you scroll past. If you want different sized images, that's up to you. It's going to display them as the size that they are. What you saw, actually, let's get out of here. What you saw in content, these are small, but nope, bad example. I don't have artwork on those. But let's just go into Nintendo. These are 250 by 250, and that's what it looks like on MuOS. You can also orient the artwork. By default, it's on the bottom right corner, but you can change that. All right, back into the file manager. I want to go over everything. You've got MuOS. You've got the info, which is where the artwork goes. Assign, I believe, is actually the file that is written to every time you assign a core. So you can probably edit this manually or just press the select button whenever you want to assign cores to either various ROMs or to, yeah, that's pretty much what that looks like. Okay. Music, or I haven't touched any of these. Portmaster is probably, yeah, that's the data directory of Portmaster itself. Save, this is important. If this is on the main SD card, so if you ever redo your SD card and you haven't relocated these to the second SD card, make sure to back this folder up or you're going to lose all your save stuff. So you've got various emulators may have their own save directory, and then RetroArch is, I think, going to be under file. So for file, let's say you choose well, I guess each emulator has its own, but then yeah, here are all my save files. Unfortunately, they're saved by emulator and not by ROM. So if you switch emulators, your save files are not going to transfer over to the other emulator, which is, I think, a flaw in MuOS, because other systems, I've seen Emulation Station, it doesn't care what emulator you're using. You can switch emulators and your save files persist between them. But here, you can see they're being saved under the emulator. But anyways, you've got save file. You also have save state. So these are where your save states go. Remember, back this up if you ever redo that. Anything else? Yep, there's a theme directory here. That's where you can put your themes, or if that theme updater app ever updates itself, then maybe you could do that too. File extensions have changed for a lot of things in Pixie. So everything used to be .zip. Now they've got these funny extensions. This is a Mux theme, but basically that's where those go. And oh, this shows you what you've installed. So when you go into your update archive manager, this is like the receipt. I think macOS calls it a receipt. It basically, it'll tell you that it was already installed. That's all that does. One more important directory is actually on your main partition. So you want to back this guy up too. Under /root /.config. Some things save to here. So you want to back this guy up too, or you're going to lose it. So one save file is under /root /.config. The other save is under mount, MMC, possibly SD card if you have that configured that way, and then your MuOS and save directory. Okay, enough about the geeky stuff. I think I'm done with files, but yeah, the Y button brings up this menu. I think the X button allows you to copy or move. It'll just move it over to the right side. So for example, if you navigate over to the right side and you, let's say, are copying between two SD cards, you can go into like, this is actually not an SD card. It's just, I don't have an SD card inserted, just something in MMC, which is the left slot. But essentially, yeah, you could just like copy right, left and right. So if you want to know how to use this commander, it's basically Y button is your action, your system menu. The X button is copy and paste on stuff. And I highly recommend this to be used for copying stuff. What else is important? If you go to settings and you're into SSH, if you want to just transfer ROMs over that way, there's, let's see if I can figure this out. Yeah, web services, connectivity, web services. So I have Secure Shell and SFTP enabled. There's obviously other services here. There's also a ROM, ROMM. I'm not familiar with that service, but there is a third-party app for that too, which will allow you to manage your ROMs from your machine. There's also a web interface. Yep. So you can see SFTP plus file browser. That file browser is a web-based interface. So if you type in the IP address of this device, which you can get from Wi-Fi network, then you can access your files that way. So what else? Oh, this is important. USB by default is disabled. So if you plug something in, it's not working, that's why. If it's enabled, you can actually plug in an SD card reader into your USB-C and you can read it that way. So now you actually have two cards and an SD card. You can have ROMs on everything, or files, or whatever you want. Let's go through themes if you want to see what that looks like. This is not the default theme, but if you go into customization, theme picker, just an idea of how different themes can make this system look. Let's select Dracula. I love how transparent MuOS is. It's just showing you exactly what it's doing. All right, and that's what this looks like. Explore content, and yep. Not that different, but quite a bit different. Another thing I like about MuOS is that when you charge, it tells you how much battery life you have. I don't think the default ROM does that for you either. If you click on information, you've got, oh, that's cool. Maybe I don't need that app anymore. Oh, look at that. Yeah, I guess it doesn't give you exact reading on the sticks. Oh, the left stick is just showing me like a D-pad. So yeah, that other app is better, I guess, but fine. What else do we have here? Yeah, I mean, this is a very flexible system if you want it to be. And if you don't want it to be, I think if someone else sets it up for you, or honestly, even the default setup, if you just know how to clone the SD card, which you obviously have to know how to do to install any custom ROM, I think from there on, this is a pretty cool, very, very simple, but, if you don't know how to do a lot of stuff, you can kind of just open up screens and open up ROMs and play them. You do have to know about those hotkeys to exit the games, but otherwise, I think that this is a pretty straightforward operating system, even though it's considered, an advanced one. I've given this one, set this up for novice users, and they're fine. Once it's set up, you don't have to know too much about how to use it. But if you do know things about Linux file systems, you can do so much more with it. Okay, wondering if I'm missing anything else. But I think that this is a good place to stop the video. And yeah, I very much recommend MuOS. I've tried other ones. They just don't make me as happy as this one. Oh, one more thing. This has the H700 chipset in it, and because it has the H700 chipset, it can't really sleep in any meaningful way. So if you just sleep this, it's going to drain through battery life. And because of that, MuOS has done something very smart. This is, I think, the first device or first class of family devices for MuOS that was kind of built for these. The way they solve that problem is by using something called sleep and power off. And here it is under power settings. So what this basically does is, well, obviously that's pretty straightforward. At 25%, it'll warn you. It'll idle the display at 2 minutes. Oh, here it is. Sleep function is what I was trying to find. It'll sleep for 10 minutes, and then it will save your state and shut down. So if you turn off the device, you press the power button in-game, and you stick it in your pocket, and you get busy with something, after 10 minutes, it will shut down so that you don't drain through the whole battery, but when you turn it back up, it will have that saved state. Now, it will not necessarily boot back into the game, but that can be done as well. There is options for that. I don't know if I can find it right now, but I know it's there. Interface? I believe there's an advanced menu somewhere. Oh, well, here it is. Device startup is on main menu. So you can switch that to Content Explorer, History, Last Game. There it was, Last Game. So that'll boot the device up right into the last game. This also supports retro achievements if you're into that. And there is also an option to, when you boot into the device to resume the game that was there, there's an option to wait until Wi-Fi connects before launching the game so that retro achievements will count everything. Got storage here. Oh, this is cool. I actually didn't know this. So this is what lets you decide if you want to keep your save files on your SD or your MMC, or your MMC is the first slide SD. Basically SD1 and SD2. If you switch this over, if you basically tap on that button and you had a SD card in there, it would now save to your second card. So if you are using everything on slot 1 and you want to move over to slot 2, what you should do is go into the File Explorer, copy the directory, or move it over to the second card slot in the same location, and then also go into settings so that from then on it looks to load and save those files to here. I think this is either new in Banana or in maybe one of the later versions of Banana is when this screen showed up. That's pretty cool. There are so many options here, but I already said I'm ending this video like 5 minutes ago, so let's do that. Cool. All right. Recommend it.